everyone. So wonderful to be with you all. We're going to be doing the Instagram Live Lupit poll interview here if we can get the sound to work. First of all, give me a thumbs up if you can actually hear me, because we were having sound issues over on the other page, and then we'll try to get Dan Rosen added. Dan Rosen, if you don't know about Dan Rosen, he is a pole dance educator and has brought a lot of not only wonderful information to the pole world, but also a lot of laughs with his pole LOLs Instagram account. I'm going to bring him on right now and see if it... Again, my name is Louise Anderson. I'm the creator of Pole Dance Foundations and the Pole Routine Concept Creator online course. Ooh, it looks like we are, yes! Yay!
Yay!
We did it. That was
Can you
strange.
hear me?
Didn't work on the Lupit poll page, but you know what? I will just share and make them a collaborator of this interview, and we'll get it started. Wonderful to have you.
You can hear me okay?
Everything sounds good.
Yay, awesome. Well, hi. Thank you for having me. Sorry, I don't know why it wouldn't let me go live with Lupit. That was so weird.
I know, it's strange. It's okay. Sometimes these tech glitches, they just happen in the tech world, and we roll with them, you know?
We're here now. We're here now. Welcome, everyone.
Yes.
How are you?
Well, I'm good. Thank you. I know that with all the things that you do, you know, you're teaching your online classes, you're a pole dance educator, but not only that, you bring so much laughter and joy to our community through your pole LOLs Instagram account. I think everyone in the pole world, if they've been polling for longer than 3 years, I know everyone knows about Susan, the poller.
Yeah, you know
That
what?
you
I need to bring Susan back. I just haven't, because it takes a lot. Do you know what? People don't actually realize this sounds like first world problems, but do you know what? Creating content for social media takes up time. Oh my God, it takes so much time. Just creating one of those videos, just one Susan video, can take me like an hour. Like, it's just, yeah, so it's just like, I really want to do it, but do you know what? I just found like we've gotten to a point now where when people are offended, they're way more offended than they used to be. So I also don't really like having to deal with that, because I just can't. I have a low tolerance for it, so I just can't. I just avoid it at all costs. So I find that when you're not making content like that, sometimes you kind of avoid it. But running a page like Polols, it's inevitably going to be really hard to avoid it. So, but when I do Susan as well, it just adds the fuel to the fire for the people who just absolutely hate it.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I always wonder about that for people who create content that is, you know, is comedic and polarizing, and you know, I always wonder, wow, they must really get the brunt of so much, you know, so many people coming back being, you know, offended by this or offended by that. And as you're saying, if you're a human with a lot of, you know, with a lot of empathy and connection, like that can really get to you after a while.
Yeah. I mean, the internet is a space where you can decide who you follow and who you don't. And people forget that, I think, and they feel entitled to have to tell you that they don't want to see your stuff. But what they have to remember is they don't have to see it. This is the
Yeah.
best thing about, you know, social media, is that you get to choose what you see. So you just have to hit the unfollow button. But people, do you know what's so funny? The people who get the most offended are people who don't actually follow my pages. Which is actually kind of hilarious, because it means that they've gone out of their way to view the content and then have gone out of their way to be offended by it. So this is the world I'm living in. Welcome to my life. This is literally what I have to deal with on a day-to-day. But yeah, I'm kind of getting to a point where I can deal with it better. I just ignore most of it. But you know, it's hard. Yeah, I think, but for any content creation, you could literally be, I mean, you create obviously quite wholesome content, and the fact that yours is mainly pole content, but I'm sure you've had your fair share of random people being offended by something you've done.
Yeah.
And you just
Yeah.
think, where did you find the time to go out of your way to be offended by this video or whatever it was? And it's just, yeah. So I do love creating the funny content, yes, but it comes with its downsides.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some humor is subjective, especially as well the British humor. is very different to like US humor. So some of the stuff that I post, people from the US really get it, and then sometimes it's a bit too dry. Like what we find funny is super dry here. So yeah, and also it's personal preference, isn't it? It's what you like and what other people like. But yeah, so still enjoy creating it though. It's fine. I just take the good with the bad, you know?
We love it. We love it so much. And we appreciate you, navigating the seas of troll intensity
Of
to put it
course, but
out
I mean,
there.
for every bad person you get on the internet, you get thousands of good ones. So yeah, it's just sometimes the bad ones really put you down, don't they? But I'm definitely getting better at sort of managing it and realizing, like, because there was a time where I used to reply to everything. I'd be like, oh, this is what I have to say. And now I'm just like, you know what? I am tired.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just too tired. I'm not even gonna acknowledge it. And like, do you know what? Actually, luckily, when a page like Polos becomes big, you don't see the message until it's too late anyway. Like I'll read messages, they're like, oh, I really was offended by this. And I'll be like, God, when did I post that? And I'll scroll back and be like, freaking hell, I posted that like 2 weeks ago and I've just totally missed this message. So that's kind of good in a way because it means you don't see it in that moment. But yeah, it's interesting. Like it's hard running a meme page, which is why I have someone, I've got an assistant called Nadia that does a lot of it now. So I mainly just do Tuesday topics now. Everything else is Nadia.
Yeah. Yes, well, that's great. I mean, you really do need a team with all this like new online business. It's such a new world. It's not, there is no handbook for this. I think we're all just kind of navigating in a sea of, we're all just doing our best. And, I'm the same way, running the Beginner Pole Dancer Summit. And of course, the amount of amazing feedback like far outnumbers the negative things. But every once in a while, you get something negative and you'll kind of say to yourself, I'm sorry, that was actually a mistake. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm still a beginner at this too. So
Yeah.
but I think once
Did
people,
you I assume you were tagged in it. You saw the Tuesday topic. The only reason I even shared that was because I just felt like it was important that people did see what I said as a response to it, because people forget that these summits and stuff serve a purpose, and people just want everything nowadays like for free. So the reason I shared that topic was because it honestly just put me into a state of shock.
I
I was
missed
like, oh my
I missed
God,
it. Tell me what
shut
happened.
up. Oh my God. It was about, so I didn't realize, I thought it was about another one. I didn't realize there was two. So there's lots of like summits now, isn't there? Like, beginner pole dance summit. I can't remember what the other one's called, but like online kind of like, so what we're calling them, like, yeah, summits, I guess, and whatever else they're called. And someone had written in and was like, Tuesday topic, like, what do you think of these like free beginner summits? I
Oh, it was
just
me.
feel like they're just like marketing, like they basically just, everyone just like tries to market their own products and just, it's like a sales like all the time. And I was like, hold on. I was like, you thought you were going to sign up to a free summit and have no form of marketing at all. You thought you were just going to get all this free content. And this is the problem, is that this is what I'm dealing with. So not only do you deal with things like trolls, but you're also dealing with people who are suffering with severe entitlement issues. And it's like,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
why the internet is such a bad place. But yeah, it's funny. That's why I mentioned it, because when I saw, I think Natasha Wang had commented on it, and she said, oh, I'd talked to this summit, and then I'd seen it was the Beginners Pole Summit. And it's funny, isn't it? But how funny that something so good can be turned into negative. And that's a perfect
Yeah.
example of what I have to deal with on a daily basis. It could be the funniest, most wholesome meme, but someone will be offended by it. But we just
Yeah.
have to take everything with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like one of those things too. I think that when the internet, it's so easy to forget that there are real humans like behind your page, and that there's a real human running the Beginner Pole Dancer Summit, and we're people who've been in the pole world for a long time and who have really great interests and want to bring laughter and love and inspiration to the pole world. And I think it's funny too, because sometimes you'll get an email that's like blah blah blah, and I'll sometimes respond to them and they'll kind of get back to me and they'll say, oh, I didn't expect to hear from a real person. I'm like, yeah, it's just me.
Yeah.
Like,
And then
Yeah.
what did they thought there was some crazy big office running the Beginners Pole Summit or something. It's like,
Yeah. I'm like, it's just me here on the computer with my 3.5-year-old playing like on the floor right now. Like, let's talk about it, you know?
yeah,
How can I
yeah.
help you?
I think as well, like with anything like this, people are a lot more brave when they're on the internet anyway. Oh God,
Yeah.
some of the messages that we get
Yeah.
come through, like to me directly, to the page, whatever it is, people would never say that to me to my face. In fact, no one ever
Yeah.
has. In fact, I could literally list off many people who have said things about me and then seen me in person, never said anything. And it's just one of those things like people are brave on the internet and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
okay, but yeah, I've always just been brought up to sort of be really open and honest. Like, if there's a problem, we talk about it, we say it
Yeah.
straight away. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like one of those things where I always just say things, but people are not always like that. And I've learned that over the years. Like, I just thought that everyone was like that. I thought everyone would just say how they feel. It's just out in the open, cleared. No, people just I think we're in a very complicated industry, like, and don't take this the wrong way, but because it's a female dominated industry, you can get a lot of cattiness, and you get the same in the beauty industry, hairdressing industry. It can get a bit catty. So I try to avoid that as much as possible. It's very hard because I'm literally like a small fish in a very big sea. So I'm obviously taken well over by female, so it's just the thing that you sort of come across. But yeah, it's just I've kind of gotten used to it now.
Yeah, I think, and really it's like you have to remember, it's just, the more that the more people that our projects reach, the more inevitably percentage wise we're going to have that happen. And we just
Right.
have to do our best. It's not really a problem. It's only that we need tools that we are now as beginners in this new world of tech, be realizing what tools we need to be able to not let those things get us down when we know we're trying to do a great service,
For
so
sure. I just
yeah, so I
think
think,
for anyone who ever suffers with things like trolling or people coming for them on the internet, you just got to always ask yourself, am I doing something good here with pure
right,
intentions? Doesn't matter if
right,
you mess up. Were the intentions pure? And if they were, keep going.
that's
You're
all you can
fine. Make
do.
your apologies. Do what you need to do, and just keep going with a pure heart. When people get offended by things that come up on polos, for example, we never ever post to insult or upset people. It just happens sometimes, and that's okay. Like, but of course, don't upset people. Like, when people see these fails and they're like, "Oh God, this has made me like really scared of my pole falling now." It's like, listen, okay, no worries, but stay safe, and that won't happen to you. But while this person has had their pole fall down, they didn't die, and they're absolutely fine. Let's have a laugh about it. Like, and use this as an educational time to learn that mistakes happen. People fall off the pole. It's okay, but we need to be aware of these things so that it doesn't happen to people. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that it doesn't happen to more people, I guess you could say. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you're just navigating a sea of like an unlimited amount of people and all of their triggers as well, like, this is going to happen. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, we all have our baggage. We're all working through it.
Right. Of course. And that's the important thing, is to remember that it's okay to not like something. I think we do forget that a lot sometimes, that when we see something and we don't like it, we don't have to be offended by it. We can just block it,
Yeah.
scroll past it, ignore it. It might just be a one-off. Sometimes people, rage on the internet, don't they? And that's okay. And sometimes I don't agree with it. And I'm just like, but I really like that person, so I'm not going to let it change my view of them. I've just decided that on this point, it's like when you have a family member who doesn't like something and you're like, do you know what I mean? Or they hate pole dancing and you're like, listen, I love pole dancing. Let's agree to disagree here. Do you know what I mean? That it happens, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I love, it's really nice to talk to someone about this who really
Yeah.
understands how that goes sometimes, building an online presence and building an online business and doing it in a space in which we adore and love so much. So tell me about your new podcast series.
Well, the podcast is literally kind of just for fun for me. It really was kind of like a chance for people to be able to speak and like hear from people who maybe they haven't heard from before. It also just kind of like raised awareness of different pole dancers that are out there. And oh my God, there's so many, like there's so many people that I still want to speak to. You don't actually realize, like, but I also just wanted it to be a chance for people to speak to lots of different people from different walks of life and just hear some interesting stories. They don't even have to be pole dancers, which is so funny because talking to trolls, someone actually trolled me a little while ago because they were like, why is he interviewing someone who isn't a pole dancer? Who are you? You know, you're just like, this is my podcast.
Yeah, you're like,
hello.
because I want to.
Right. It just, but anyway. But yeah, so I just kind of like, I find people's social media brains I find really interesting. I love listening to how people run their social medias, how they start their businesses and stuff. Things like that really interest me because we got some smart ass bitches in this industry. I tell you, like, you don't even believe. Like, there are people out there making great money from, you know, like I did an interview with someone who's a pole dancer who does OnlyFans, and that was so interesting to learn. I was like, I was just desperate to know, and I wanted someone who was willing to talk about the numbers as well, because that's something that actually is quite taboo within pole, is talking about numbers, like how much people earn. And the thing is that anyone with a brain can kind of work it out. Do you know what I mean? But I just wanted to be able to talk to someone who I knew wouldn't care about talking about numbers. And she was telling me how she built up her OnlyFans. And I just thought, well, that might help someone. Someone who's looking to make some extra income might be like, oh, actually, I'm going to give it a go. And they might learn from it. But also, I just want to have fun. I just want to talk to people who are fun and just have a good laugh, because laughter is like one of the only things that kind of gets me through when times are dark, like COVID and stuff like that. Laughter for me is like such a good medicine. You know, when you get that laughing, crying, that for me is like a drug. Like if I can get that, I'm like, oh my God, I just feel great afterwards. So I'm always just looking for people who are going to make me laugh and fill me with joy, and which is why we're talking now.
Yeah, I know. It's really nice to connect. Tell me about all your online. Do you have a brick and mortar studio as well as all your online classes too?
Yes, it's small. So it's just 6 poles. So I have a small studio, which is in the UK. I only really teach a couple times a week there because I'm traveling and then I'm teaching online. But yeah, so I teach online like kind of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which is like conditioning Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But I also teach some like online tricks classes as well. So that's what I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and sometimes the weekends I'll teach some tricks classes or whatever's going on. And then Tuesday, Thursday are generally like my studio days. And then weekend days are workshops. But obviously that's like 7 days. So I don't always do 7 days. I'll sometimes, like if I'm doing workshops all weekend, I'll take like a weekday off. I'll miss like the studio on the Tuesday or the Thursday, and I'll just give myself like a rest day, which I know pole dancer having a rest day, what the hell is that thing? But I do try to have them sometimes. Do you actually, I'm going to pass the question to you actually, what do you do about rest days? What's your schedule like in terms of rest days?
I'm pretty all over the place right now because I really do consider, since my daughter has been born, I mean, my daughter was born, and then when she was 6 months and I was just getting back into the studio, that's when COVID hit. And so then there was that huge pivot where we lost our brick and mortar space. I pivoted to a lot of online classes, went really hard on that for a while, and just really burned myself out on that, having a young child at the time.
Right.
And so, yeah, so that was hard. So getting back to my own training has definitely been a challenge. I'm in the studio teaching at this point, probably around 4 days a week, but nothing that is super intense for me. So a lot of, you know,
Right.
teaching as a lot, you know, as pole teachers know, is a very different than actually training. I am still at a point in my life and in my, this is good for people to hear, in my season where I am obviously still teaching a lot, but my solo practice is very, very much lacking. I feel like having
Oh
my
my
three
God,
and a half
yes.
year old. Yeah. And I think it's good for people to hear this, you know,
That's
my
actually not
teaching.
talked about enough within our industry. I don't know if you find that. Like people, like someone actually messaged me today, for example, and was like, "Oh, why are you not doing this competition that's coming up?" And I'm like, "When? Like when would I
Yeah.
even get the time to train? Like
Yeah.
my life is crazy. Like
Crazy. Yeah.
I'm
And we
running
have
like multiple
seasons, you know?
businesses. That
Exactly. And we have
yeah,
seasons. So for right now, it was really about saving my brick and mortar studio. We just actually moved into a new location. So that's a whole project, being just the pole mama and making sure that my community is strong and my teachers are happy and have what they need. So running the brick and mortar studio, you know, the pandemic is really what got me into online business. That was the rabbit hole that I went down in an attempt to save my studio. Right. So at that point, it was really about, that's kind of where my like beginner program was born, and where the Beginner Pole Dancer Summit was born, was all this. I was teaching online, realizing, oh my gosh, like people didn't even have poles at home. Like I have a lot of people who are calling me at the brick and mortar studio saying, it's the middle of pandemic, I don't think you're giving classes, but I want to learn. And I was being able to support the people who had already been pole dancing with me, but I was not able to support all the phone calls that were coming in for the people who wanted to learn. And I said, this is not acceptable to me. There is something obviously lacking here. And that's when I created my beginner online program, Pole Dance Foundations, because I was like, we need to have something. So when someone calls me and I'm like, we're closed because of the pandemic, the government won't let us open, but I have this amazing program that is basically my training that you can have, and my support that you can have, my in-person support that you can have, but online. So that's kind of how that was born. And then that, from there, then the idea of the summit was born. And I said, wow, we can reach a lot of people here and support the beginners in a way that they're not going to have to go back and get a bunch of stuff. So it's really interesting. Now, in a nutshell, so much of my time is admin and running my online businesses, which would be Pole Dance Foundations, Pole Routine Concept Creator, and the Beginner Pole Dancer Summit, and then being mama to the brick and mortar studio, and then being mama to my 3.5-year-old. So my rest days are needed as much mentally as they are physically these days, because I'm not pushing myself a ton individually. As a pole dancer right now, I'm just really nurturing my students and my community and building my online businesses. I hope I didn't lose you there. I've got a spinning pinwheel. Are you there, Dan? Let me see. I do still see comments coming in though, and I did see some wonderful comments earlier of just congratulating both me and Dan. Dan on the Pole LOLs and his interview, and me on the Beginner Pole Dancer Summit. So I'm scrolling back. So thank you, Joanna Life of Pole. And thank you. Who else commented here? Natalie Mays. Yes. Thank you. The ubiquitous pole dancer. I signed up to the summit and wish I had something like that at that price when I began. So many gems. Well, I'm so grateful for you all to joining us. I am not sure if you're still hearing me come through loud and clear or not. Oh, he froze. Okay, you can still hear me, everybody. Give me a thumbs up if you can still hear me, okay? Oh, looks like I'm gonna bring Dan back on here. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Hash Clothing Brand France. Thank you so much. I'm gonna bring Dan back on here and see if we can finish up here. And if we are destined to have more tech issues, then I might close down the interview for now. But for everyone for joining us, I appreciate you. And thank you for chatting with Dan and I today. I'm going to go ahead and close it down. Bye, everyone. If you have questions for Dan and I, feel free to go ahead and post a comment on this video when it gets posted on my feed. And Dan, yeah, he just froze. Okay. And Dan, we'll have you on again if you can hear you. You can probably hear me, but you're not on here. We'll have you on again because this conversation has been just beautiful and wonderful. Oh, I can see you. Okay, Dan, let's see if I can bring you on one more time. I'm like waiting for the Instagram. You can see me, but we can't. Oh, there he is. Haha. There you are.
Do you know what? I don't know. This is why I never do Instagram lives. I'm just like, so have you still been just talking, or did you stop and start again?
No, I've just been here.
I literally, like, do you know what happened was someone tried to call me and I was like, oh, so I got rid of it. And then I was like, and then it froze me and I was like, oh my God. It's like, why can I not get back onto this live? That's so annoying. Sorry, you were talking about, so I literally heard everything you were talking about. But
Oh, you
so when
did?
you were
Okay.
talking about how your beginner course starts and stuff, see, it's something that kind of just happens like generically and like, it was
Yeah.
like organic. And that's
Yeah.
literally what happened with my online platform as well, because, and actually it caused a bit of a stir because what I'd originally planned to do, right, was I wanted to just do 31 days of conditioning for myself. And I just
I
invited
remember when
everyone.
you posted that.
I was just like, does anyone want to do it with me? Let's do 31 days together. What I'd kind of underestimated was that everyone was at home. So everyone
Yeah.
wanted to do it. Like everyone wanted to
Yeah.
join me. And like 10,000 people joined that group, like to join in with the challenge. And so, literally we had like in each
Wow.
class. So the class was like non-interactive. Like you could ask questions in the chat, but like you couldn't talk because obviously we had like over 500 people in most of the workouts. And it was crazy. It was just absolutely wild. Like it was crazy, but people got so much from it. And then they were like, what are we going to do now? Like, it's almost the end of January. What's happening? And I was like, okay, well, we'll keep going. So then I did a couple of
Yeah.
extra months thinking that life would go back to normal, and it didn't. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, there's something here with this. People want this. So that's when I decided to start the Pole Destroyers, which is where all of the conditioning is now, because originally it was like all via Zoom and stuff, but people had to see Zoom recordings, and there was just, I wanted one sort of space where I could put it all. So that was when it was born, really. And it's just, it's a great place for people who naturally aren't strong and need regular conditioning, because it keeps them in a regular sort of strength and like means they can keep achieving loads of new stuff. But for people as well who are fairly naturally strong but need that boost every now and then, people every now and then will just come in, do a couple of months and leave again, and then they'll come back, do a couple of months and leave again. So it's a really useful tool, and I really underestimated it. But at the time, it caused a bit of a stir because I just intended for it to be just a bit of a free, bit of fun challenge. But because people were struggling at the time, people then started coming to my free challenge classes and just started not paying to go to their studio classes. And it was just really difficult because I was in a position where I was like, listen, I've kind of promised everyone this free thing. And, you know, it's just conditioning. And I kind of thought, well, it's not going to take away from anyone else. But I think temporarily it kind of did. And I felt a little bit bad about that. But lived and learned, which is why then after
Exactly.
that,
How
it
could we
was,
even know? No one had a
of
handbook
course.
for how we were all going to have to pivot during the pandemic. And we're all just, again, it's like we're all doing the best we can. The intentions are really, really good. We're finding a way
Mm,
to be able to continue to do our passion, continue to share our passion, continue to, offer instruction, offer,
yeah.
inspiration and instruction where people need it. And, gosh, we learn along the way. That's why I'm saying is, I think that people, you know, it's better that we're out in the arena trying to do good and making
Right.
apologies where needed, rather than saying, you know what, like I can't even deal with all of the negativity, I'm just going to shut it all down and take a break.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility to find ways and tools to deal with that so that we can continue to let our light shine. And again, we're not, we're up to having the conversations, you know what I mean? We want to hear from
Yeah.
people, we want to hear the conversations. So how were we, we weren't, how are we to know how any of it was going to work when the pandemic happened?
Oh,
Everyone was just trying to survive and connect,
I,
you
I
know?
remember at the time I was so scared. I was like, what's going to happen? I was like, how am I going to make any money? And then actually
Yeah.
it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. Like it really opened up a completely new business for me, and like opened kind of like an income stream for me that I didn't know was even going to be there. And that was just such a blessing, really. I'm so grateful for it. And I'm so grateful that people are still on it, like still doing it with me. That's just awesome. Considering the fact that we're kind of, I wouldn't say we're well out of it, but we're well out of lockdowns and stuff. You know, the lightness of us having lockdown now is so low. So the fact that people are still finding value from it is super important for me. But I also think, like, I don't know what's going on in the US, but obviously we've kind of got a bit of a financial crisis going on here. And I think for people who used to spend a lot on studio classes, if they can't afford to do studio and, do lots of classes at the studio, they can kind of maybe half and half a little bit. And I've got a lot of students who do that. They'll do their 3 conditioning classes with me, maybe a tricks class with me during the week, and they'll go to the studio and they'll do a studio class. And I think that's such a cool way for people to also be able to like hybrid it and do a bit of both. So that's quite cool.
Yeah, it's allowing, I think, people to take a lot of their own training into their own hands and feel like they have a little bit more control over it, and they can kind of, pull together what they want their schedule to look like and what they want their influences to be. And that's great. The more that
Yeah.
people get to have a hand in how their training is, who they get to train with, what they want to be focusing their attention on. I think that's great to be giving the individual the power to make that happen for themselves,
I remember at the time I remember thinking like, I knew that building up this following was going to come in handy at some point.
You're
And I was like, thank God. Like, because, when we did online classes, again, a lot of people were really like, oh, everyone's just going to all the famous pole dance online classes. And I was like, yeah, I can kind of understand why the studios are sad about that. But obviously for us, it was great because it meant that, especially for the ones that didn't have studios. So for people like Natasha Wang, who didn't own her own studio, for example, I mean, I can't speak to her exact situation because I don't know if she does anything else, but, I know that she doesn't own her own studio. So it's like, for her, it must have been awesome because it meant that she could keep herself going, but also she wasn't just available to people in LA. She was available to people from around the world, which for all of us, it was amazing. And, yeah, it kind of opened up a new world for us. And it also meant that people could train with people that they never thought they'd be able to train with. There's people on the other side of the world that message me and like, oh, it's so cool. I get to take your classes. And I would never have been able to otherwise because I would never have been able to get to the UK, which is so cool. And I kind of love that.
Yeah, it is cool. And I remember I was in a really unique, I actually haven't spoken about this in a long time because it was really the middle of the pandemic. But I was in a really unique position. I think you too, going into the pandemic, being a brick and mortar studio owner, but also having been, this touring pole artist. So I kind of saw it from both sides. And I don't know if you remember, but I was working with Alanis, and I created a program called Zoom slot sharing, where it was
Okay.
me, Natasha, Claudia, Jordan, a lot of the artists who were with Alanis, with the Poles on Tour management. And basically what I did is I said, hey, look, it's great for these pole artists to be doing all their own things. Everyone should be able to try to make a living right now. And it's just Zoom. It's just online. Who goes to say that the studios can't put these people on their schedules and then do a profit share with both the artist and the studio, so that some of that money is going to the studio. So for instance, me as the Vertitude Santa Rosa, I said, hey, we're in the middle of the pandemic. Not only can you take classes from me and my teachers at the Vertitude, but you can also take classes from Natasha Wang, Jordan Kensley, Jennifer Kim, all through my studio, where I had the platform and the ability to take payments very easily, and then take that payment and then have some of it for the studio and bring some of it to the touring artists as well. So we had this Zoom slot share that was going on because, again, when everyone's at home, it's just a link. You just share a
Right.
link. So now when
Yeah.
someone's taking a class, they're both supporting both the studio and the performer. So that we had that going for a while, and that was cool. And we got a lot of awesome feedback on that. But again, there were a couple of people, who were saying, oh, this is just making it easier for the touring pole artists to make more money. And I was in a situation, I was trying to kind of smooth it over with everyone, because I was like, listen, I understand the studio mindset right here, because we're drowning and
Right.
everyone's closing. Like, I get it. And I also understand the mindset of just like the solo touring artist. So I was trying to find a way to bring all that together so that the students could then have access to everyone, the studios could be supported, and the touring artists could have their classes more full for classes they were already giving, right?
Yeah.
So You know, to have 2 people in their class, or hey, you could have 30 people in your class if you do it through the Fortitude Santa Rosa, and I could pay you out for that. So that was kind of a fun thing that we were doing for a while as well, because, you know, the online world, I think that we forget, is this incredible, it's a different mindset that the brick and mortar entrepreneur. You have to
Mm-hmm.
remember that the online world is limitless. You will never run out of leads. You will never run out of people who are interested out there, because you're in the online world. You're not you know, forced to only deal with being like locked in by your location. So I think the more that
Yeah.
we realize, and like this summit as well, it's like we don't have to be locked in by location anymore. We can share all this amazing information and support both the attendees and the students, and also support the businesses of all the touring artists and all the pole artists who have a lot to give in this. There is a win-win situation in the online world that we have never even seen before. And
Mm.
that is the coolest. It does take a little bit of a mindset shift though, after being a brick and mortar entrepreneur
Yeah.
for so long.
Mm. I think the difficulty is that people are always out for themselves. So I think it's really hard. I think we're trying to share that kind of like, you know, trying to get the studios. I can imagine that was probably a nightmare to manage. It sounds like a nightmare to manage that, to manage like the touring artists and the studios and stuff. It must be
Yeah.
crazy. But my husband's just joined this live. I don't know why. He's literally in the same room. Oh no, he's not.
Hi.
He's moved to the. Hi, Mitch. Don't know why I
Lovely
watch
to
him
have
from
you.
there. But
Oh, this is so
yeah,
cool.
it's weird, isn't it? It did change a lot, and I'm still learning. Like I'm always trying to improve it, and you know, a lot of people do. You know, one thing I always get a lot is, oh, I do so much better at the studio, and of course we do. We all do better at a studio, right? That's just the
Exactly.
truth of it. This
Yes.
is why my main thing is conditioning, because conditioning you can kind of do anywhere, because conditioning is one of those things where you can make it fun, do it at home, keep it cheap. I know it sounds weird, but like if you want to get benefit from conditioning, once a week just isn't really going to cut it. It will help, but it won't really give you that boost that you need. So I always say to people, I'm like, yeah, once a week is great, you know, and if you go to a studio once a week and you're just doing 5 or 10 minutes in class, it's barely going to touch a thing. You know what I mean? It's one of those things
Mhm.
where you've really got to put that time into it. So why would you want to do that in a studio? It doesn't, because that's where that for me, the studio is where the fun happens. That's where the cool shit happens. And
Yes.
like at home, if you're a confident enough polar to do cool shit, great. I think for you to do like course that you need to be like one of those types of people that can really be self-motivated and feel safe enough to train at home on your own. But the studio as well is also a place where I would say, like, so for example, like I won't teach a fungi online. I'd never teach a fungi online. There's
Yes.
certain flips I won't teach online. It has to have sort of like a safe kind of movement to it that I know that even if you did want to try it, you could bail out of it.
Yeah,
Whereas some
yeah.
moves don't have bailouts and they need spots. So I'm just like, listen,
Right.
there's some things I just won't teach online, and
Yeah.
that's just a non-negotiable. But it's so useful for people. I mean, some of my students who are doing online in studio are absolutely killing it because they're getting all of their strength from online. They're getting all of these like extra tricks and stuff, all of this knowledge for like hardly any money at all, really, compared to what you pay at a studio for that amount of classes. And they're going to their studio. Like they're just fucking killing it. And I just think, God, like if I was a student again, I'd 100% be doing the two because it makes no sense to me to do it any other way. Like, and I understand that some people will be like, oh, I'm not trying to take away people away from the studio. What I think is an idea is for people to hybrid it and do the two, because they're just going to get so much benefit from that. Someone actually just asked a question. What was it?
Yeah.
What would you advise if we want to start an online pole business? I think
That's
the
a
difficult,
whole other
yeah,
that's Dan and I will come
the,
back on to do that
well,
one because that one's huge.
what I will say to you is that yeah, it's huge, and I would say though the difficulty is that starting an online pole business only really works if you've got a following, because if you haven't, who are you selling to? That's the difficulty, and if you haven't got the audience to sell to organically, you've then got to pay for it. and you've got to have a fucking shitload of money to be able to hit that amount of people, because marketing on social media now is so expensive.
Yeah.
So it's not easy, but if you've got a decent following, it can be manageable. But yeah, I mean, that's literally, I could do a whole podcast on that. I've learned so much
Exactly.
over the years, but
The
but
ubiquitous
yeah,
pole dancer. Meet Dan and I. We'll do another one of these, and maybe we'll make
yeah,
that the theme. Um,
yeah, for sure.
because yes, I know that we both have so much to say about that, and also going along with what is Dan is saying about wanting to start an online pole business is something that I think is really, really important, is to really find your niche. Like, find what you love and what you're passionate about and what you want to share, and niche that down even more. Like, become
Yeah,
very, very clear about who you want to be working with and why, because your why is the only thing that's going to keep you driving and keep you moving forward and keep you coming back to asking the hard questions that Dan and I have to ask ourselves all the time, right? Or
yeah,
like, or getting the feedback and having to listen to the feedback and know what's useful feedback and what is not useful feedback. And so yeah, really niching down and finding out what you love to teach, what you're good at teaching, and how you can make those things all wrap up into a very small niche. Like, who are you going to serve? Do you want to serve polars over 50 that are that are dealing with osteoporosis? Do you know what I mean? Do you want to serve first time pole dancers who have never touched a pole in their life? Do you want, you know what I mean? So really niching down to find out exactly who you want to be talking to, and making sure
hmm
that that's something that you're both knowledgeable and passionate about.
yeah, for sure. Someone else asked a question. I don't. Can you see these questions? Someone put, I've been dancing 5 years. I still haven't told my folks due to the stigma. How do I slowly break it to them, or should I keep it hush hush? Honestly, I just feel like Kathleen, is that her name? Yeah, Kathleen. Honestly, Kathleen, it's up to you. Like, I mean, it's one of those things that you don't have to tell them if you don't want to. I find this really funny actually, because people ask questions like this on polos a lot, and I'm like, do you have to tell them? It's like, I don't know, like, is it necessary? Like, is there going to be a crossover? And if there might
Right.
be, then maybe tell them. Like, but if there's no crossover and they're never going to need to know, then don't bother them if you don't want to. If you aren't comfortable with telling them, it's like the only other
Yeah.
thing I can compare it to is, how like some people have certain sexual preferences, things they're into. They don't go to their home and tell their mum what they've been doing at these clubs or whatever they go to. Why would they do that? Like, they don't need to. So I have a really odd opinion on that, because most people are like, oh, fuck them if they don't like it, like, you should disown them. I'm like, no, like, honestly, like, there's some things I think that if you just want to keep to yourself, keep it for you, keep it as your thing, and I think that's fine.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, it's really, Kathleen, I think it's really dependent on your relationship with those particular people, how important it is to have their blessing or approval. Is it at all needed? Do you know what I mean? I remember
Right.
someone telling me, take a small, tiny piece of paper and write 5 people's name on it that you actually really care what they think or what they mean to you. Like, their opinion to you really matters. 5. You only get 5 people. Write it on a little piece of paper, put it in your wallet. And when you come up to things like this, where you're like, oh no, like, people disapprove of this, people disapprove of that, or am I doing this wrong, or how do I feel about this, or whatever, I need some support. Don't go listening to the estranged brother that is not on your piece of paper, that you don't really care what they think.
mm,
Go to your piece of paper and say, what would, Grandma Bev say about this? Let me give her a call. What would my good friend so and so say about this? And go to those people, because you are never going to please everyone. You're put on this earth. You are a star seed that was put on this earth for one reason, and that's to experience life in this meat bag. That's it.
yeah,
Okay. So, like, you will then go back star seeding into the universe, but you are this soul that now gets to experience this body and the senses that this body has to offer. And we have one chance here.
right.
So, like, try
So
to
how much
remember.
how much does their opinion on it matter to you? Like, if
Right.
if you don't really care about what their opinion is on it, then don't bother telling them. It's just one of those things. And if you do tell them and they don't like it, well, just remind yourself that you didn't care whether they like it or not. You were only telling them to be polite. So I just think you've got to do what feels right. If you feel like you should tell them, tell them. But I think you also need to remind yourself that actually what you're doing isn't taboo. Like, it's different, I know, but it doesn't matter what you're doing. Like, if you're into some kinky shit or whatever, like, that's your thing. It doesn't have to be taboo for them, not taboo for you. It's normal. That's the thing. Like, and if they don't like it, that's their problem, not yours. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
there's a
the
lot of
issue.
like, exactly. There's a lot of like, we're a new generation and there's a lot of breaking out of this like martyrdom. You have to remember that, there's all this stuff from like generations and that we're still trying to break out of, which is like, oh, well, they always put themselves first and they only think about themselves first. Well, no shit. It's you.
Hmm.
You're supposed to think about yourself first. I hope you do.
Right.
And
But this is the
like,
thing, like, and you've got to gotta look after number one. Like, if it isn't serving you, then what's the fucking point? Like, do you
yeah,
know what I mean?
yes.
Absolutely. Like, you've gotta put yourself first, I think. Like, and just don't let what anyone, no, family or not. Like, do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And also, this comes back to the thing we were talking about earlier, where it was like, sometimes you might disagree with people, and that's okay, and they can be family members too. You know, um, my nan, like, she's from a completely different generation. She's got some really old school opinions on certain things that she won't budge on. I'm not gonna freaking not talk to her because of it. That's just the opinion she has. I don't have to agree with it. You know what I mean? And I think that's the thing. Is that if you do tell your parents and they don't like it, well, that's their problem, not yours. But
Yeah,
if
yeah.
it's going
And
to cause that much
yeah,
of a problem, just don't say anything about it. Or
right.
what
And
you
like when,
could do is you could be like, oh, one of my friends has just started pole dancing. Like, isn't that cool? And then if they're like, oh no, that's horrible, just be like, okay, then I'm not going to say anything. Right?
asking
Test the
asking for a
waters.
friend, just asking for a friend.
What's your friend's name? Oh, her name's Susan. But
Oh yes.
yeah,
And I mean, and it's like true. It's like, with your nan, it's like there are things that you're gonna choose to chat with her about that you are gonna love chatting with her about, and then there are some things that you are just gonna choose not to. you know?
right, exactly. And that's okay. Like, why do we have to, and also, why do we have to tell everybody, like, do you know what I mean? Like, why do we have to tell everybody everything? Like, can't we just have our own secrets? I think that's fine, no?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so awesome, Dan. I just
We could
feel
talk
like
for
we need to do
ages.
this every week. I think I
I
just need to
know.
come on here
We
every
need to
week.
put the world to rights, like, every week. We could do that totally. I need to have you
Oh,
on my podcast, actually. I'm going to message you, but I'll message you separately about that.
I would love that. And just so people that are joining us here, all of your offerings, can you just give us a little rundown of where we can find you and be a part of these programs?
Yeah, I mean, I offer lots of different things. Like, check out my website, poledancewithdan.com. I'm doing workshops in different countries, so go and have a look. See if I'm in your country. Come see me. I'd love to see you face to face. But if you can't do that, then come and see me online. I teach online conditioning classes 3 times a week, and I do lots of pole tricks classes as well. Come and check me on the website. There's a schedule on there and stuff. So yeah, I'd love to see you online. I've got Polos, which is my meme page. Go and check out Polos. Yeah, so, and if you're ever in the UK, come and visit me at my studio as well. But if you go to my website, pretty much all of that is on there. Go and check it out, or just follow me on Instagram. Go to the link in my bio, and it's all there.
All right. Well, I love you, Dan. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. That was a fun conversation.
Thank you
I needed
so
that
much.
today.
I'm sorry about the technical issues. I don't know what was going on there, but we got through it.
It's
That's the
all
main
your
thing.
fault, Dan. All the tech issues, they're your fault. Okay.
And now you've got to try and find out a way to add Lupit as a collaborator on this. So good luck with that. And if that
Thank
doesn't
you.
work, then we'll just have to do this all over again.
All right, my dear. Sounds
See
good.
you.
Have a wonderful evening. Mwah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Dan.